Hi, loves. I just wanted to do a little lesson, updated, note taking in the research process, and really just have you think about how to make sense of what you're exploring. So, essentially, what we're going to go over is just like why it's important to take good notes, two important features of note taking, examples of how to take notes, and how to keep your notes user friendly. So, why is it important to take good notes? Effective notes. I don't love the word good, but that's really how you kind of roll. So, let's talk about it. First reason really is that you need to work to avoid unintentional plagiarism. I think that living in the generation in which we do, where we have access to this information and it's floating around and we're building off one another's ideas, it's very easy to unintentionally plagiarize. And to take good notes allows for less space for that to happen. It allows you to, well, when you do, or why it's important, I guess, to take good notes, it allows you to focus on what's important while you're reading. It allows you to understand and remember the material and make connections. You know that I talk a lot about making connections and how it's not just about listing, but building and relating and listening to that conversation that is happening. It allows you to begin to construct your assignment and provide a personal record of what you've discovered, and it saves time later on. So the two sort of really important parts of this, beyond what we'll talk about, is to be meticulous and accurate. It is really important to always record the necessary details as soon as you start taking notes, so no matter what kind of notes you take. And I'll go over a number of different kinds. We all know that we work in different ways and own our information and our thinking and learning in different ways. And in the research process, that's great, but there are some things that are sort of like non-negotiables. And with note taking, it is this meticulous and accurate nature that's going to be really helpful as you continue forward. So always recording necessary details as soon as you start. Thinking about in-text citations, what page did you get it from? What are the titles? Who are the authors? These things are really important. So when you're pulling notes and paraphrases, don't forget that because it'll save you time. And you can just see some examples of in-text citations. You have the last name of the author and the page number, or if there is no author, the title and the page number, or if there's no page number, just the author. And it's important also to have a clear system so you know which notes are paraphrases of someone else's ideas. So that's something that you would still need to cite within your text. Direct quotes, which will be fewer than the paraphrases perhaps, and which ones are your own ideas. What are you synthesizing and building? I know I talk to you a lot about where's your voice in this larger dialogue of research, and so you have to be able to distinguish what is theirs and what is yours, and how are you beginning to synthesize based on what your research is speaking to you. And this could mean this clear system could mean color coding or labeling with paraphrase quotation, own ideas, etc. But just find a system. Remember, if you photocopy an article or chapter, and make sure you include the page numbers. And if you take notes from a website, just keep a note of the URL and get a jump on your MLA Works Cited entry and recording your citation. And I would do that for any type of source that you're collecting. It's super, super, super important to be active, not passive. Don't be a passive note taker. Passive note takers, we're the ones that are just like mindlessly marching along and underlining words and cutting and pasting and copying direct quotes without putting them into our own words. We're these sort of passive note takers, the ones who write notes on everything or underline everything or highlight everything because you're really not sure what's important. And that you're not evaluating and being critical of sources. You're not doing that kind of self-checklist that we think about. Is this valid? Is this reliable? Is this really helping me? Is this the most revealing piece of evidence or source for me to include in my work? Don't just accept sources as valid and reliable, and we're getting so much better at that. So be active, be intentional, be thoughtful. It's really, we talk about this all the time. Do it with intention and sincerity. So active researchers, this would be the flip side, think about what they want out of their research before they start. So this would be our line of inquiry, right? And we talk a lot about in lines of inquiry or inquiry questions, not to close yourself off to possibility by inserting assumptions. You might think that you already know what you're going to find, but don't close yourself off to what might be out there that you don't already know. Look for answers to questions that you have about topics. You're not afraid to ask for more questions when you're an active researcher. Active researchers look for connections in the sources that they're researching and the topics that they're studying, and really ask themselves, like, what are the voices around the table saying, right? I always use this imaginary table. If all of my sources were sitting around the table, what are they saying to one another? How is this relating to that? How is it jumping off that? How is it vibing off that? How is it working against that? Active researchers write notes, mostly in their own words, as I said before, and focusing on really the explanation of what something means, not just, again, mindlessly trying to search for some statistic that might work to fill in some space. And then record quotes only when it's important to have exact words. It's For me, I do often record quotes, especially if I'm digital, but I think very much more about which ones I can't say on my own, right? So quoting is reserved for what I can't say on my own in a better way, in a clearer way, in a more concise way. I might still put them on there, but I'm using them really just as an anchor to come back to my own voice. Sometimes you just really need an awesome quote by an expert, though, to support yourself. So keep that in mind. There are lots of different ways to take notes, and I have links on our research document for all of these, so I'm not going to take time to totally go into them, but Cornell note-taking is a method that can be applied to subjects. You might have done it in science or other courses, but it's a really consistent way of thinking about main ideas. This might be in the early parts when you're just thinking about sources as a whole and gathering notes, so you can pause and check this out if you want. Note cards. There's a great YouTube video to remind us about note cards. Again, I will send that link out to you if you need it, and I'll do a little, I guess, informal poll to see who needs what. This, much like note cards, you can take this approach idea by idea, this idea of cite, quote, paraphrase, comment, and it's kind of good. Think about, like, where's it coming from? What's the quote? Where's the paraphrase, and then what's my sort of like interpretation, implication that I'm gleaning from this? It's a very systematic way to do it. You could set it up in a number of ways. So you write your MLA citation, you quote, you paraphrase, you comment. And so this is a really easy and systematic way of doing that. My hybrid, so during grad school, I did a lot of research. As you know, I developed sort of a hybrid model for myself where inside of the sources, if I was doing them online, I would take them, put them in documents, I would color code them, and then I would take them sort of to the side and then start paraphrasing and moving around. And it became really like, as my thought clusters emerged, I switched the colors and I would shift them around. And it was just like a really interesting way of learning how I think. And I would be happy to share some of that with you if you have questions. Something magical and new, I just made an info video for you, so I'll also send that out, is Google Keep, and it's a really incredible tool for online note-taking and storage, and I will send this link out, but I'll also send the link to this slideshow out so you can access the video that way. But Google Keep, it's really a great tool for storing in this world and movement towards working with Chromebooks and really working with Google Docs. Diigo is an awesome non-Google tool for online note-taking. Again, this is a video that I made that you'll be able to access if you want to learn a little bit more about that as a method. And sort of like important, really important to remember finally, that you have to create user-friendly notes. This is for you. You're not taking notes for other people, right? You're not taking notes for other people. You're not showing off. You're not trying to take copious notes to see who made the best notes or who took the best ones. This is ultimately you grappling with these voices, right? And trying to figure out what are the best voices, the most relevant pieces to really work. And so thinking about what you're writing and why, as always, with intention and sincerity is super important to use to create user-friendly notes. Make them brief and selective when possible, especially as we get into the more refined space of research. Keep them well spaced out for ease of access. Show relationships between main points. Remember, I'm a huge, huge proponent. You have to start thinking about how ideas connect and relate and build. It's not about listing. It's not a report. But what are you really saying? It's super important to use your own words when possible, even in your paraphrases that you quote. that you cite, use your own words. You're not parroting everyone